And good evening, everybody. My name is James Irwin, Director of Educational Programs, and welcome to tonight's webinar, Chapter Financial Management Best Practices. I appreciate your patience as we've gone through some technical difficulties this evening. Our presenter this evening is Chris Hallam. He's the Province Delta Archon, and he's going to do an outstanding job. If you have any questions during this presentation, please go ahead and raise your hand using the status bar at the top, and we will go ahead and enable the audio. So you can ask the question directly. You can also chat about it at the bottom, or enter it the old-fashioned way in the Q&A box. So without further ado, Chris, take it away.
Great. Thanks again, James. My name is Chris Hallam. I am the Province Delta Archon, and I've worked for over the last 10 years working with student organizations, and in particular, one area that I work with them on is advising students on their finances. So I hope to take a lot of that experience and make it applicable to all of you. So to begin, let's talk about what makes the Eminent Treasurer role so difficult. It should just be as simple as you take in money and you make sure that you spend the money appropriately. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. One of the first areas that makes it difficult is you as an Eminent Treasurer are managing collective funds where everyone believes they have a say in their money. Some members want to budget conservatively and make sure that they have money for a rainy day. Others want to say, if I paid this money, then all of this money should be spent while I am here. Others may only want to spend it on social, and others may want to save the money for the future in any unforeseen circumstances. So managing all those personalities becomes part of your job responsibility. Chapters, which is a large majority of you, that the Eminent Treasurer's role is in collections, oftentimes you can have a difficulty in holding brothers accountable and making sure that they pay what is due to the chapter. And then, how do you say what they can and cannot engage in if they have outstanding debt? Third, as much as some of you may have accounting backgrounds, maybe taking some business classes, maybe just pretty good at numbers, many of our students lack formal training in everyday financial management, and this is really their first experience managing a budget and managing how to save money as well. And finally, every fraternity has different business plans. Some fraternities are responsible for collecting rent, paying for a cook. Some have to pay their own utilities. Some, the alumni, take care of that, or their house corporation. Others have bill collection agencies. So I'll try to keep this presentation as broad as possible, but know that I may not be able to address every individual aspect that is relative to you. Our hope today is to address each of these difficulties in the job of the treasurer, and then give you a greater foundation that you can take back to your chapter. Here's the order of information we're going to cover. We're going to give some information about the position. We're going to talk about the chapter management website and the impact on your budget. We're going to walk you through a budget and show you some elements that you may be missing. We're going to talk about the 990 form. And finally, we're going to discuss the challenges of the treasurer position. So, a while back, we did a survey of SAE treasurers to gather some information on what their business plans, what their challenges are, and I want to give you some data from that assessment. First, 69% of our chapters have a debit card. Only 34% require 2 signatures if they manage through a checkbook. 85% have a budget, and there were actually 3 that were honest enough to state that they do not even set a budget for their chapter. Only 23% have the chapter actually vote on the budget or where their money goes to. Also, only 56 provide an expense report or demonstrate to the chapter where their money has gone. Now, these hopefully are pretty clear reasons why there may be some areas where these chapters can improve, and we'll go through some of that. Here's a couple more data facts. 80% are aware of 990s, but only 40% have actually completed them. 63% report trouble with their brother paying the dues. So that clearly states that that is something that the majority of our chapters are dealing with. One chapter reported that 30 members out of a 55-person chapter brotherhood are currently unpaid, meaning that's probably where a lot of their efforts are going instead of leadership development, chapter management, as well as university relations. Finally, just a point of fact that I've shared with some other chapters now that I've realized this fact, For the largest budgets that chapters have, recruitment and social are tied. So I think there was about 25 that their largest budget was recruitment, and 25 that their largest budgets were social. This is excluding rent and meals, because not every chapter has to deal with rent and meals. So that's some data on the areas that we're working with SAE, and let's kind of go through and talk about each one of those. Let's first begin with some of the financial dangers that I just hit on with some of those facts that popped up and I thought chapters should know about. First, let's talk about debit cards. Whereas debit cards are practical and make it very easy to make expenses, particularly those who can't operate on a reimbursement style process with their members, it also opens themselves up to a lot of embezzlement and a lot of other difficulties. I know of a chapter whose treasurer used their debit card and spent it on Patagonia clothes, spent it on personal expenses, took it out to the bar, and the chapter didn't even know that this had occurred until their funds were completely depleted. I did a training for all Ohio State treasurers, and over half of the treasurers of all the sororities and the fraternities talked about someone in their chapter using the debit card for personal expenses, taking it out to the bar, buying drinks, and then trying to reimburse the chapter. Clearly, this is not good quality financial management and could lead to trouble down the line. How does that happen? Basically, the number 2 financial danger, lack of audits. Lack of audits may seem excessive and too detailed of work, but if you're starting the habit of having peer audits or chapter advisor audits, then 3, 4, 5 years down the line, that habit is going to continue. All an audit needs to be is that a second or third person looks over all of the expenses, looks over the record keeping of the treasurer, make sure that checks match the expenses that were actually put in place. So that means collecting receipts and handing in receipts, and then finally reconciling to the bank account. In conducting these can be done in usually 20 to 30 minutes. You just pick a couple examples and make sure everything's in line. Thirdly, a lot of our chapters nowadays are used to the electronic age, where we monitor the overall amount, but not month to month. And they're used to instantly, if you make an expense or write a check, that appearing on your bank statement. What chapters really needs to do is just monthly go through and reconcile to their bank statement. This also allows you to follow up on any uncashed checks. Because what happens is, maybe from one semester or one quarter to the next, people begin to forget about those uncashed checks, and 3, 4, even 6 months down the line, those checks can pop up back again, and it throws your budget off and everything else. Also, I've seen where uncashed checks get lost in treasurer transition. If you're reconciling monthly, you can have a log of those uncashed checks. Just working through some of these 3 financial dangers can really keep your finances in a strong condition and a strong place. So let's talk about some of the better quality or best quality practices that an eminent treasurer can engage in. You have the ability to present your budget to actuals weekly to your chapter. This not only demonstrates to the chapter that you are keeping track of all of the expenses, but also allows them to make quality educational decisions. As we discussed, having semesterly and quarterly audits in place, even and almost especially when you think everything is going well and you trust your treasurer, again, sets a foundation for future success. Oftentimes having some form of Excel or QuickBook tracking of deposits, expenses, budgets, check numbers, dates. If you're just doing it on paper, or you're just writing checks and hoping for the best and not reconciling your account, then you're going to run into some difficulties. But also keep it simple. I've seen some treasurers have the most excessive and expansive Excel or QuickBook type situation set up for them, and then the next person isn't able to follow them, or then when it doesn't, the numbers don't compute, they're not able to go back and track and figure out where their mistake is. Keep it simple. Expenses, deposits, and then where it falls in your budget. If you operate on a reimbursement process, I strongly encourage you to have 2 signatures required by your bank for a check to be deposited. This requires, say, your treasurer and a president, or a treasurer and a vice president, so that you're verifying all expenses and all money that's going out. This significantly reduces fraud. And then finally, because I do believe in the education and quality of a fraternity, a semester and quarterly breakdown percentage analysis of where you spend your money on. So if you bring in, let's say, $10,000 and $6,000 of it is going to social, is 60% of your budget going to social really quality financial management? This way you can maybe track whether you spend too much money on t-shirts, food, social, but also then that you're spending it on recruitment and new member education. So one good practice that I didn't just briefly hit on is budgeting for SAE and your university first. In personal financial management, you pay yourself first. This is the example of paying yourself first. Basically, most chapters know that they are going to have some form of IFC dues. All of you should know by now that you have a risk management fee that happens in late fall. You know that you're going to bring in new members and have initiation fees. Perhaps your province has dues. You want to send a member to leadership school, and every 2 years, budget for convention. This is your example of paying yourself first. In your personal finances, you have rent and you have food that you know you need every month, and that's what you budget for first. This is your rent and your food. Time and time again, I see chapters not budget for these items, and they know that they're going to be something to prepare for. I know a chapter in a province who ran out of money for leadership school and their province dues because they put it towards one last social event instead of paying themselves first. So, let's talk about the membership services. A little bit of that method that we were just talking about, that this is one of those aspects of paying yourself first. Again, for some of you, this may be easy, and you can do this website backwards and forwards. However, even the strongest chapters I know do not know perfectly how to manage this site. And the sheer amount of chapters who do not even know this, or the treasurers know how to access it, or say they were never taught, can be fairly maddening. So let me just briefly walk you through the chapter management website. Yes, I do mean, so a question was asked, by paying yourself first, do I mean upcoming expenses? Yes, the paying yourself first is the expenses that you know you're going to have to pay as a member of SAE. You know you're going to have to budget for. For example, as we're going to walk you through here, you know you're going to have to pay new member fees as well as initiation fees. So let's walk you through how to do that process. So first, you go to this website, the SAE.net, and you click on Chapter Management Tools. Then, as you go, it'll bring you up to this page. You click on Submit a Pledge or New Member Class, and then click Add a New Class. It will bring you up to this calendar. You may not be initiating in August 2013, but you can select the date of which your formal pledging is about to begin. And then you hit Submit. Then it will bring you up to this page where each pledge has to enter in their biographical information. Key part here is actually reading the instructions. I'm guilty of it myself, that I just go through and figure I'll be able to manage it myself. However, there's key pieces of instructions here that when I talk with SAE membership services are often lost. And so as a result, when chapters have difficulties or for some reason can't enter in information, it's because they didn't follow the instructions on this page. So once you've entered in that information, what you'll need to do is you'll need to hit Submit Class. I was not able to take a screen grab of this, but once you submit the class, then you need to hit Process. And this is, you should get an invoice for your new member fees or pledge fees at that moment. If you don't receive that invoice, then you haven't completed or haven't hit Submit Pledge Class. So then, in Membership Services, if you want to go back and submit for initiation, click on, again, Chapter Management Tools. Then, instead of Submit a Pledge/New Member Class, hit Pledge/New Member Management. Again, now you're going to select the date of initiation. Now it brings us to the membership services page. Hopefully, you've had at this point everyone complete their OCP and pledge and their scope of association. Once all of your class has done this, then you can begin the process for initiation. Notice on this line that all the OCP and SOA have been completed, so when all new members look like this, then you can proceed from there. You click on the box, Submit for Initiation, and then you also enter in the badge order in which you would like them to proceed from. Once all of that is complete, you hit Submit Changes. Ideally, you want to do this 2 weeks prior to initiation in order to be able to make the payment, as well as allow SAE to ship and for you to receive your shingles and badges. One of the most common mistakes, again, that we talked about is at the bottom of the screen will refresh, and the next screen will say, "Thank you for reporting." And then you need to go to the bottom of that and either enter Pay Online or click Bill Me Later. This is when the process is complete and the members are added onto our database. A good checks and balances: if you don't get the invoice, email, you still have one more step to go. Again, a simple process, but I hope this makes it clear so that you can manage your new member fees as well as your initiation fees in a timely manner. But alright, now that you've completed that and managed, how do you really keep track of a budget? What are some good ways? Let me walk you through one example, and please note that this is a fabricated numbers, but I did for this example. But let's walk through a simple tracking system. This is a tracking system that I use with all of my student organizations that I advise and walking them through. I am happy to share with you a blank form of this. Please just contact James Irwin or myself, Chris Hallam, and I'll be happy to send this to you. And I can easily walk you through the steps of setting it up. But the basic elements are true, so I'm going to walk through some of those elements in creating a budget. First, you want to start with your initial overall balance. This is your balance in your bank statement. This is not the balance of what you want your budget to be. You then break down all these sub-accounts for all the areas that you want to budget for the course of that semester. You then enter in the amount, the initial balance on each of those sides that totals the initial overall balance. So you are allocating what is in your bank account, and again, not money that you think you will collect. And if you want to track where your money goes, you then enter in various areas for a purchase analysis. So this will allow you, as we discussed earlier, to present to the chapter the percentage of money that you're spending on. So then, on another tab, this is the way to keep track of the money that is coming in. Conceptually, it is very important that you track when money comes in, not what money you expect to come in. So for example, you don't enter in a deposit of $10,000 that you believe you're going to collect, but if John Smith gives you dues of $500 and you deposit that in the bank, you enter in $500. And then the next day, if someone else provides you funding, you enter that in on another line. This way, it will allow you to budget with the money that you have and not the money that you think you have. So you detail out each deposit. You write out the amount of that total deposit, and then you allocate it out what budget you want that money to be taken from. You can split it over multiple budgets, or to keep it simple, just from one budget. This is keeping track of the deposits and the money that you have. Next, you can look at expenses. First, you start breaking down what each of the description of the expenses are. Social, recruitment, it can be as descriptive or as vague, that works. I prefer on the left-hand side putting each name of the expenditure so you can go back and keep track of the checks and who you wrote those checks to. Then you detail out the total expenditure that or check that you've written to somebody, and then you allocate it out into which budget that money wants to come out of. You enter in that amount, and then you reconcile with your bank statement what month that check appeared in your bank statement. This will allow you to keep track if, say, on line 23, Grant Taylor has not cashed his recruitment event check. You can follow up with that person each month and know that that check still needs to appear. And then finally, a good tracking system will then demonstrate for you how much money you have remaining in each sub-account or each budget. This is what you should be able to bring to a chapter meeting each week, so that if someone wants to know how much money they can spend on philanthropy, you can say specifically, we have $185 left, and then your chapter can make an informed decision on whether they want to make that expense or not. Here's just an example, and again, this is completely optional, but I think it is what makes a strong chapter financial management enhance themselves, is again being able to say, we provide 43% of our budget went to dues and initiation, but then 13.84% went towards social. And this allowed the chapter can decide, particularly let's say that they want to enhance their recruitment expenses, whether they're spending enough percentage of their budget and not just focused on amount. Again, you can keep track whatever way you would like, but I hope each of these have provided some examples of ways that you can think about you may or may not be working currently with your budget. And again, this is another way to look at that amount. So moving on from budgets, and I'll be happy to answer some questions about it at the end, or via email for those of you viewing this later. But let's move on to, what is the 990 form? The 990 form is the way that you, as a student organization, can maintain your tax-exempt status. Yes, it is something you have to do yearly, but it is only a reporting mechanism. It is different from how you would do your own personal taxes. So if you report your expenses, they allow you to maintain your tax-exempt status. When you need to complete this can vary, but most chapters and house corporations operate on a fiscal year budget, or July 1 to June 30th. You have 6 months from the start of your fiscal year for when you have to report this information. Please note that chapters who have not, of SAE, who have not yet presented this, reported their 990 form and have been caught by the IRS, have been fined upwards of almost $14,000 for failing to file. Well, clearly that will change from chapter to chapter. This is just hopefully to let you know how important this is. One thing to know, if you've not filed before, you need to file as a first-time filer. And this will help signal to the IRS that this is the process that you wish to engage in. If you need more help with the 990 form, particularly the first-time filer piece, you might want to contact Dan Stanzik, and you can find his information at SAE.net. He works for the Service Center, and you can find his contact information by going to SAE.net, Faces of SAE, going down to Fraternity Service Center staff, and then looking up his information there. If you're viewing the presentation right now, you can also be shared his web email address is dstanczak@sae.net. Now I've been leaving this up so that you can see that here are some other helpful websites to at least educate yourself more on the 990 form process. If you're viewing this online, feel free to hit pause and write some of these sites down. A couple other points of information that you should know about the 990 form. There is, at the convention this year, a bylaw amendment up that will require chapters to submit their 990 form to the national headquarters. So hopefully you can get a jump start and begin that process in case that bylaw amendment passes. Again, please contact SE for assistance. That's what we're here for. Don't forget, this also includes house corporations. They also need to complete their 990 form. The type of form that you need to complete is all dependent upon your gross assets. Most chapters' gross assets fall somewhere within the range that would require you to complete the 990 EZ form. But again, please view some of these websites, view the IRS website to find out specifically what 990 form would be best for you to complete. Again, we are here to help. So, Let's talk a little bit about some of the frequently asked questions we get for treasurers. So one of the most frequent questions we get is, how do we get brothers to pay dues? Let's walk through some of those problems. Problem one, if you don't have brothers paying dues, you are probably in some way or another enabling them to not pay. If you are letting unpaid brothers vote, live in the house, eat your food, participate in social events, or do anything affiliated with the chapter if they are unpaid or late, you are enabling them. And I know that's an easy answer, and it's very hard for a chapter to do. But build up a group of brothers committed to saying no. If you end up hearing, though, the response, but it is unbrotherly to say no to them, or to stop them from attending things, then this should be a clear signal to you that you have a problem. Problem time you say, hey, we are going to make everybody pay, and you can't involve yourself in the chapter until you pay. The first time you don't stick to your word, you're going to have a mountain to climb. Lack of payment will increase because now they realize they can get a free ride, and somehow they may be able to encourage or manipulate an individual or a chapter to not have to pay, and others will then start to see this problem as too, and you begin to have the snowball effect. So you need to be firm and stick to your word about having brothers pay their dues. Problem number 3. I'll often see chapters, maybe the seniors are about to graduate, or as they want to get a fresh start, so they just. But the signal this sends to, let's say, the younger members in the chapter is that you're basically saying debts can be forgiven. And when it comes their turn to pay, they will bring up, well, 3 years ago or 2 years ago, you forgave their expenses, why can't you forgive mine? Remember, every decision you have makes a 4-year impact. So these are some of the 3 biggest struggles or problems that I see chapters have, that they're enabling chapters to not pay their dues. So let's walk through a couple solutions. Solution number 1, read off in chapter who is unpaid and make it clear that they have no vote and cannot attend any organized activity until they are paid. Basically, you're making this clear, you're bringing the attention to the chapter, and then you may be able to have other members help hold those brothers accountable by saying, I paid, you now need to pay, and they know whose debt is still out there. Solution 2, and this may be drastic, but sometimes you need to send a message. Cancel events until brothers pay. If you don't have the money, don't have an event. At the very least, inform members who may be, if you operate on a reimbursement process, inform members that they will not be reimbursed for expenses related to that event until each and every brother pays. Now, people who want reimbursed for their expenses are going to be on your side to encourage collections. Repeat this phrase before the event happens, not after the event, and ask clearly if anyone is unclear about this. Again, that way you have made established that this is going to be the policy that is followed, and there's no debate. Stand firm, and the other social pressure will make them pay. Again, it's not pretty, it's not easy, but sometimes it takes doing 1 or 2 moments like this that then will start to force other people and encourage them to start paying the chapter. Number 3, if they have any positions, remove them from those positions. Why should an unpaid brother be able to hold a leadership role in your chapter? Or, if you're able to, if you have an agreement, you can do some more research on this. Turn them over to collections if you're able. You'll pay a small fee for those collections, but it may be worth it for the money that's collected. And again, these are not easy solutions, but this is not an easy problem to fix. And so sometimes it does take something drastic to be able to get chapters in line. Remember, the future of your chapter does depend on it. So when we did a survey, we asked Eminent Treasurers, what are things that every treasurer should know? Here are what some of them said. The first thing they said is that collections is a necessary part of the position. Make sure you find support. Make sure you have people that are going to support you with the hard-line decisions that you may have made. Someone said, know how to create a budget. Know that your regional director, your province archon, your chapter advisors, even alumni, even email me, and I'll be willing to help work with you to create a budget, because it's a great first step in managing quality chapter financial management. Here's the equation if you're looking to reconcile to your bank statement. The amount collected that month, in addition to your starting balance, less checks or debit card cashed or used, plus any checks uncashed, should exactly equal your bank statement. Do this every month, do this every week, and if you cannot do this in 30 minutes, then you probably have a problem and need to put some work into it. As we talked about, fill out the 990 form, ask an accountant for assistance, ask an alumni who might be an accountant for assistance, and don't forget to say first-time filer. What every treasurer should know, one of our members said, figuring out what is your job as a treasurer and what is the house corporation's job. Again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that everyone has a different business plan, and so figuring out clear expectations of what is your job is something that every treasurer should know. Just ask. The time this position takes is 5 to 20 hours a week if you have lack of organization and accountability. And then on the flip side, someone had said this job only takes 1 to 2 hours a week if you're firm on collections and reconcile weekly. Pick up a phone when dealing with your brothers, not email. I love to tell chapters and students that email, Facebook, and social media is diffusion of responsibility. People can claim they missed the email, that they never saw the email, and there's no way to know or prepare or expect a response. Phone is the best way, or face-to-face, when dealing with your brothers. So then we asked them, what did you wish you had known? Here's what some of them said. Don't collect cash. I'm not exactly sure what this person experienced, but I can only understand that the temptation for cash is too easy to be spent on other things, can get easily lost and not deposited, or easily stolen compared to checks and even a debit card. Create an end-of-the-year report on tips that you learned, bank account information, how to do certain tasks. This is just what's going to make your chapter a stronger chapter, because then otherwise, the next treasurer after you is going to have to learn all over again. Even the best transition meeting doesn't make up for a reference that they're able to pull up a Word document and just be able to learn what you've learned in that year. Take notes throughout the year on a Word document and clean it up at the end of the year. For those of you who operate with Bill Highway, Omega Phi, maybe your university, or an F&H, know that system backwards and forwards, because you are going to be the first line of anything dealing with money, and so when the member goes to use this website, you're going to be the one to get all of those questions. Do a per semester, or if you're on the quarter system, a quarter budget. Don't do an entire year budget. This allows you to be more focused. This allows you to then, if on a semester system, realize what mistakes you made one semester and fix it on another one, and allows you to make things more local and keep track. Hopefully, as we talked about, knowing how a budget works, and again, being able to report that budget every single week and chapter. And finally, I thought this was a great comment that they wish they had known, is they swore on an oath to pay. It is your job to enforce it. So I hear there might be some questions, and so at this time, if I'm happy to answer questions from any of you, as well as if you have questions after viewing this presentation, if you'd like to email them to me, and hopefully I can give you some support and response.
Sure thing. One of the questions that came in is from Nathan. What about payment plans? How should they be used? What are some good practices for payment plans?
I've seen payment plans work. What are good practices is make sure even that you create something in writing, something that you and them both sign on. And payment plans have to be very detailed and very date specific. So if someone says payment plan is on this date you pay this amount, this date you pay this amount, and then on the payment plan have clear expectations. Should I miss a payment date, I will no longer be able to vote in chapter. I will no longer be able to attend events until I have met that expectation. When you have that, you can very clearly pull it back out again for them, as well as you have something very specific to hold them accountable to it, as well as to give them a few reminders. The difficulty that I've seen with payment plans is particularly when it comes with pledge fees, and then initiation fees. So I encourage you, if you have set up a payment plan for either of those, that you set them up far enough in advance that you have that money up front to be able to submit to the national organization. And again, you need to balance payment plans with some of those yearly expenses, such as the risk management fee, so that you have enough revenue to be able to make the expenses that are necessary. So they can work, but again, that just takes extra effort on your part. And if you find they don't work for your chapter, you need to scrap them completely.
Our next question is, are billing companies like Omega Phi, are they really worth the extra money in terms of assisting with our finances?
I think we can probably put you in touch with various chapter organizations to get the student perspective on that. There's a fee that comes with those organizations. I find them to be helpful because, again, that will make it easily be able to turn people over to collections and easier for you to manage who has paid and who hasn't paid. So I would say yes, but there's definitely some drawbacks that come with it. So I think anyone with SAE can put you in contact with those organizations, but I know those that have used them, and once they learn how to manage that process, there's definitely a clear yes that they couldn't do this process without those companies, and the aggravation and time that is spent is far worth the nominal fee that you would have to pay.
And just from my personal point of view, I agree they are worth it to an extent. If you've got a really small chapter, it may not be worth the fee. But again, it just depends on your operational model. Next question I've got, and this is the last one I've got submitted, so if either of you guys want to ask another question, please go ahead and type it up there. What is the best method for determining how much should be budgeted in what areas?
Well, honestly, I'd like to budget according to what goals and expectations that a chapter may have. If you are really struggling with recruitment, perhaps you lay off on social and other concerns, and that you put the majority of your finances towards what is going to be strong recruitment practices. If your goal is to get involved with the university and be known by other chapters, and you want to put more money towards philanthropy and university events, then that's where you want to allocate your expenses. So I think it's a chapter by chapter decision, and that's why I encourage you to break it down by percentage in the end, and it really should just kind of meet the goals of your chapter.
All right, that's the end of the questions that I've got. If anybody has any other questions, please go ahead and type them now. I'm going to turn it over to Chris for closing thoughts.
Again, the best practices for chapter financial management is including the rest of your chapter, is being attentive and staying on top of your expenses, and it is a necessary part. We are not able, and you are not able to function without revenue, and you're not able to enhance and grow your organization without putting money towards your goals. So I hope that this process has worked out well for you. I hope you can see my email address, and please do not hesitate to email me with any questions that you may have. This is a passion area of mine, and SAE is a passion area of mine, so anything that I can do to combine the two. Thank you, and Phi Alpha.